This episode of the Construction Record is brought to you by the Ontario Sewer and Water Main Construction Association. Clean water is everybody's business.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Construction Record. This is Vince Versace, National Managing Editor of the Daily Commercial News and Journal of Commerce, joining you today. With me, I have Mike Yorke, President of the Carpenters District Council of Ontario, and Chris Sutton, Political Director for Millwrights, the Millwright Regional Council of Ontario. They have other titles. They've told me plenty of hats, but those are going to be the main ones they're wearing for this chat as we talk about the Fighting Tax Fraud campaign that they're involved in. Mike, Chris, welcome to the Construction Record.
Vince, great to be here. Chris,
thanks, Vince.
Yeah. Thank you, gentlemen. So, I think our listeners, it would serve our listeners some interest and some good intel if they found out a little bit more about this campaign that you're rolling out, that about fighting tax fraud in construction. So, Chris, Mike, if you want to take it away for a little bit, maybe give the listeners a bit of an overview, and Chris as well, fill us in on.
Sure. Look, I think it's really great to be on with Chris, because I think part of the whole concept of this campaign we're doing is about collaboration across the board. So carpenters and millwrights in Ontario is one thing, but we are carpenters, millwrights, pile drivers across North America. That's how the campaign is being run. So it really builds that relationship between our respective organizations, and it shows a great partnership for the members and for the public. You know, this is one of the major issues in our industry, and it's been determined by, for instance, the Ontario Construction Secretariat has done some research using PRISM and analytics, and people are probably well known. The individual, John O'Grady, is well respected by both labor and management in our industry, and they're looking at anywhere from between $1.8 billion to $3.1 billion per year is missing to senior levels of government in their revenue because of tax fraud. How does that happen? Well, in Ontario, it's primarily driven by misclassification of workers as subcontractors. And so instead of being an employee with all the appropriate healthcare, tax, WSIB deductions, these are characterized as independent contractors, and then no one's paying taxes at all. So that's where we accumulate those figures. So across North America, as you can imagine, it's in the multiple billions. So the Carpenters Organization, the union, has taken it on. This was our third annual year of this campaign. I'm sure we can drill down on some of the details, but that's kind of the overview. And I'd like to pass it on to Chris and to pick up on anything I may have missed in that overview.
Like Mike said, on an annual basis, you're looking at $3.1 billion at the top end of this, okay, in lost taxes, okay. It really, when you look at it from a large standpoint, a lot of stuff can be done with $3.1 billion. Infrastructure, healthcare systems, a lot of stuff can be built, okay. If you look at it from a whole, okay, the UBC, Millwrights, Carpenters are trying to educate, okay. As Mike said, this is kind of a new campaign. We've been doing it for the last 3 years. COVID hit us quite hard last year. We weren't as engaged last year with our members. We weren't as engaged last year with the public. So the message kind of got dummied down, so to speak, right? And now we need to come back this year, and we need to come out loud and proud and let them know, this isn't going away, this tax fraud, okay? It takes away a level playing field. When you have honest contractors out there paying their taxes and doing the right thing, right? The safety courses that we provide for all our membership, both on the Carpenters side, the Millwright side, and throughout the UBC, we spend millions of dollars a year on safety training and proper training for our members, okay? These crooked contractors that are working the underground economy, they're not doing that, okay? There's a study that went out through union construction workers, 31% safer unionized construction workers, okay? And why is that? It's because our contractors are doing the right thing. It's because the unions are doing the right thing. They're keeping our members safe. They're keeping their families safe, okay? And when you have a contractor that wants to sidestep, okay, and do things through the underground economy, it affects everybody. It affects the communities, it affects the province, it affects the country, and most importantly, it affects all of our members and their families, okay? at the end of the day, and I'm sure Mike will agree to this, at the end of the day, we want guys to go out there and make a good living, make a good dollar, and come home and spend that money and that time with their families and have a good life.
So are we looking at, we talk about the underground economy. I understand the tax implications of it. There's always the safety implications. The goal of the campaign, Chris and Mike, is it awareness even just amongst sector people, like in the industry, to really get a grasp of the dollar amounts we're talking about? But is the goal also as well to motivate government? And how are you going to, what's your ask of government to help in, responding? Let's call this the dirty little secret of construction. That's what we call it.
Vince, if I can set that up and just respond immediately, and then I'll flip it over to Chris for the second half. So you're absolutely correct when the goal is education. So look, it's a big campaign. There's a lot of, and there are individual goals. One of the goals is absolutely the case, educating our members to the extent of the problem, educating the public as to what's happening. And as Chris has pointed out so eloquently, look at what the unions are doing on health and safety. Look at the contributions we're making on apprenticeship training. We play this leadership, respectable role in the construction industry. And this is just one component. Educating the public about tax fraud in the industry is one component, but we also want to educate the political leaders, and we're giving them solutions and potential solutions. So when we get into that discussion, I wanted to flip it over to Chris because he can add to that side of it.
Go ahead, Chris. Maybe some more insight around solutions and whatnot. Yep.
So as Mike pointed out, education is crucial. With this campaign going on and on, and I'm sure our counterparts down in the States and across Canada are starting to realize the same thing. Our government, is not fully aware, I believe, of what's actually transpiring. And the more we can educate government officials throughout all the communities, and the more we can educate them on what's going on, and subsequently come up with some type of reasonable solution to police this problem. As you pointed out, it's that dirty little secret. The more people we educate in our community, the more people we educate in our industry, the more people that know about this, then we can bring these contractors that aren't paying their fair share, that aren't doing the right thing, we can bring them in front of wherever and make them accountable, for not doing the right thing. All right. We have many contractors that we deal with on a day-to-day basis that are out there. They're paying their taxes. They're looking after our members. They're looking after the health and welfare of our members. And at the same time, they're having to do all this where these other contractors, which are circumventing the system, are getting away with, as billions of dollars worth of revenue that the community, that the government, they're not seeing this. So we need to educate. We need to, and with the COVID thing, like I said, it created a problem last year with us. We need to come out even stronger this year, And our campaign through the UBC throughout North America, we're really hammering down on this, letting all of our members know, listen, when you suspect that there's a contractor out there that's not doing the right thing, that's not following the rules, that's supplying or supporting the underground economy, you need to do the right thing and report them. Whether it's to your union official, whether it's to a government official, wherever, we really need to hammer down on this and get people doing the right thing.
Question, because you mentioned North America and Mike as well. This is not, even though you both represent Ontario here, we're talking about the Ontario side of things. This campaign isn't just regionally here.
Sure.
The issue around tax fraud and the underground economy prevalent on both sides of the border. So my question to you is, when maybe is there a difference in the solutions maybe available down south in the States versus what we see here in Canada or in Ontario? Maybe give a bit more insight around that, the scope and breadth of the problem, and if there have been anybody that's tackled it in a way that maybe we should.
Maybe I can sort of start this off. So look, tax fraud really is a spectrum in the economy, in the construction industry. So it can be anything from some guy painting your basement, doing a bit of drywall, whatever, off the books, off the record. And on the other end of that spectrum, you've got worker exploitation, you got human trafficking, you have people being complete undocumented workers or new Canadians, new Americans, just being totally exploited. So where some jurisdictions are worse than others. Look at the US over the last 4 years. They've had a federal government that's been asleep at the switch on this issue. I'm very pleased to see that there's been a sea change, breath of fresh air in Washington, and the communication between that administration, the new administration, and organizations like unions like ours, it's like night and day. So we have some ability now to at least get a listening ear on our concerns. So, in certain areas in the States, the worker exploitation, especially among undocumented workers from Mexico, Latin America, Nicaragua, Guatemala, it's just a terrible situation. So that really needs to be addressed. And one aspect of what I really love about being part of a larger organization, we start to see some benchmarks on positive steps that are being taken. So in terms of our communication with our colleagues based out of Washington, we'll hear examples, say from California or Nevada, whatever they're doing. One really interesting one came out of the state of Virginia very recently, where the Attorney General implemented the first worker protection unit. So that has specific responsibilities in this industry. It can investigate, it can prosecute abusers, and it also has an aspect of education of the worker around their rights. So that to me anyway, is a model that I would like to be able to take to senior levels of government, both here in Ontario and to our national level. So we try to see where some great benchmarks are, and then we say, can this be implemented in our jurisdiction? So, to me, that's a positive step.
How about you, Chris? From a millwrights perspective, have there been solutions you've heard of or seen or engaged in, whether regionally or nationally, that help tackle this problem?
As Mike alluded to earlier, it's a relatively new campaign we're doing, and as the days go on, we're starting to see more and more of the effects of this tax fraud or tax evasion and the underground economy. With a lot of the collaboration with our U.S. counterparts and some of the stuff they're doing with the new administration, as Mike said, it's giving us more and more ammunition to take to our government officials and to our politicians, both locally and at the federal level, to say, here's some ideas from our counterparts down in the States. Can we implement these and get a grasp on policing and eliminating tax fraud here in Ontario and subsequently across Canada? It's really something that we really need to focus on and look at what the best course of action is so that we can eliminate this problem.
Sure. What are the next steps for the campaign? Next kind of major signposts? What are you doing as far as initiatives, lobbies? Anybody want to jump in on that?
Chris, why don't you handle this, and I'll jump in at the right time.
Right now, what we're doing is we've had, like we talked earlier, Vince, we've had multiple invites and meetings with different politicians. We're doing a social media. As you know, COVID is still not gone; it's still here. So a lot of our campaign is done through social medias, press releases at our council level. Mark has been orchestrating a campaign based on a social media platform. The in-person stuff that normally we would do in the first year, unfortunately, we can't do it. The social gatherings, the in-person stuff, the protocol for COVID is what's hindering us from doing this. So a lot of what we do now are based on social media platforms, as we're doing now, whether they're virtual, whether through podcasts, whether through press releases. We're utilizing, all the different social media platforms to try and get that message out there, to try and educate not only our members, but the public. And with virtual meetings that we have with different government officials, we hope that we're able to spread this message across a wider band and see where it takes us. And I'll let Mike elaborate. I'm sure they're doing a lot more on their end.
Yeah, Vince, we're taking on a very exciting campaign. I would suggest that this is probably the largest campaign that the Carpenters Union has undertaken in 2 years, as Chris has mentioned. Last year, COVID really just hit us, and like everyone else, it was just a shock to the system. However, this year we've had some time to consider what we're going to do. So I think we've got a very exciting campaign, and we want to engage our members as much as possible. Members look to the union and the union leadership for that leadership. They want to see what we're doing. And if we're taking on a big issue in society And on behalf of the members, I think there's a sense of pride there. And I think that's what everyone in our organization across North America wants to instill in the membership, is a sense of pride that we're doing the right thing. We're doing the right thing for the members. We're doing the right thing for the community. And we're leading the way in our industry. Construction, face it, in Canada, at one point in time, we might have said it was oil and gas that drive our economy. My argument right now would be that the construction and the land development sector that's leading the way in our whole economy. And as a big organization within that, we have a responsibility to stand up for the broader community. And that's exactly what we're doing. So our campaign is really multifaceted. So for the, and we're not just looking at the days of action, the 14th to the 17th of April. We had to lay the ground rules and the ground education, as Chris had mentioned. So we've got ads on television, so CP24, CTV. We're working with TLN for a language, reaching out to Spanish, Portuguese, Italian. We're working with Chin Radio. We're working with Sirius XM. That's just the air war. Then we've got direct messaging to our members through communications mailed to their homes. And we're also working with print media in multiple levels. So whether it's community neighborhood press or ethnic press, we've probably got 20 publications that we're working with. Then you get to the job sites, kind of like the trench warfare side. So we got pencils, we got hard hat stickers, we have posters on the job site. Our members on the job site are going to be seen by all the other trades as the leaders on this issue. So you're going to have electricians and plumbers and other people coming up to the carpenter and the millwright and say, wow, what's that poster all about? What's that hard hat sticker all about? And then they'll pick an opportunity for individual dialogue and individual leadership by our members on the job site, which is to us will be a benchmark of success in the program.
Okay, thanks for that, Mike and Chris. Just as we wrap up, the question that comes to mind is the traditional or perceived relationships unions have with government. Depending on the stripe of the government, some people will say, well, it's a collaborative, almost favorable relationship, or it's a very adversarial relationship. How does an initiative like this, depending on the government in power, kind of impact you guys as you approach it, or does that play into it at all? That's, usual experience you have with government.
Chris, are you okay with
Go ahead, Mike.
on this? Okay. Yeah. So Vince, look, that's is one of our goals. One of our goals is that dialogue and the creation of discussion, communication with the senior levels of government. So whether it's provincial or whether it's federal, it could also be city, of course, right? So, I think one of our goals really is also, we want the Carpenters Union to be seen as a spokesperson, a spokes organization for the concerns of an industry. So you gain respect from that. You gain, that the interest of government to say, we need dialogue from the carpenters because they're out in the lead on this. They're speaking up for the little guy. They're speaking up for the community. And so I think there's some real opportunities gained there when you take on an issue like this. So one of the things that we've been doing in the campaign, and like we're saying, there's lost opportunities. And one of our themes is imagine what we could build with that lost revenue. So if we're talking anywhere between $2 to $3 billion in Ontario, imagine what we could build in transit. Imagine what we could build in healthcare. So we're in dialogue also with individuals in Scarborough, in Brampton, in Windsor, in many other communities. And I will give some credit to the provincial government, because in their most recent budget, they are putting money into healthcare in Brampton, and they are putting money into healthcare in Windsor. I just have to take on the challenge to say we need to take a look at the requirements and the needs of a community such as Scarborough. But you know what? That continued dialogue, I think that's a healthy thing. It allows us to bring forward important issues in a respectful manner, and I think we get respect from that. Chris, have I missed anything in that discussion or that answer?
As Mike said, Vince, the MRCO and the Millwrights, they want that collaboration with government officials. They want that collaboration with politicians, because when you have an adverse or an attacking type relationship, both parties stop listening. We don't need that. We need everybody on board to listen to the message we're trying to bring across. We need to work with these government officials at all levels, at the local level, in the communities that we live in, at the provincial level, and at the federal level. Everybody needs to understand what is involved here and what this issue is. And as Mike said, imagine what we could build if we got a grasp of this. That $3.1 billion does a lot of good things in communities all across Ontario and all across the country, right? So our stance there is to work collaboratively with all the organizations, with the politicians we have, both here locally in Windsor and throughout Ontario, Scarborough, Toronto, and stuff like that. Have that dialogue, continue that dialogue, continue that constant talking about it, and educating. Educating, I think, is the biggest part of this. As it's a new campaign, it's fairly new in its infancy. Okay, we need to have that education. We need to make sure that everybody understands, okay, how this affects them, right down to the guy working on the tools. And that's pretty much where the council, the Millwright Council, stands on that.
All right, gentlemen. I want to thank you so much for making time today to allow this deeper dive into this campaign. I think there's stuff there that you guys have said as the media that covers the industry. It's interesting to see. You know what I mean? Some of the facts, like the way you're trying to work with government, because we know it can be so difficult and contentious sometimes because everybody gets stuck in those stereotypes, right? Yeah. And you're trying to rise above that. And as a media partner, media stakeholder in the industry, I find it admirable what you're trying to do, and we wish you the best. And by all means, come back and give us updates as we go forward.
Okay, great, gentlemen, and good Easter to both of you.
Happy Easter, everybody. Guys. Thanks, Vince, for the invite.
No problem. And thank you to our listeners. If you want more information, you can go to stopthefraud.ca or look at the social media of both the Millwright and the Carpenters, and you'll find some extensive stuff around videos they've shared and press releases as this goes forward. Thank you, everyone.
This episode of the Construction Record is brought to you by the Greater Toronto Sewer and Water Main Contractors Association. Clean water, our goal, our future.